incumbents that are under indictment. In Southern California, we have a congressperson who is in that situation. So, will President Trump be reelected? I don't know. Will President Tsai be reelected? I do not know. But from the American experience, it's important to keep in mind mostly incumbents win. Since World War II, there are 3 cases where American presidents were not reelected. First of these is Jimmy Carter in 1980. Okay. George H.W. Bush. But actually, even before both of them, Gerald Ford, who was actually never elected. So he wasn't really trying to be reelected, but he wanted to stay in the job. Now, all 3 of these had 2 things in common. Number 1, they had powerful opposition from somebody in their party. So in the case of Gerald Ford, that person was Ronald Reagan. He ran against Ford in the primaries. In the case of Jimmy Carter, that person was Ted Kennedy. And in the case of H.W. Bush, George H.W. Bush, it was Pat Buchanan. So they had opponents that raised questions and got attention. So they couldn't just coast until the general election. But probably more important than that was the fact that all 3 of these presidents were trying to get reelected in an economic downturn. President Trump is not likely to face significant opposition. Former governor of Massachusetts is running against him. Probably few people can name him. Okay. But about the economy, stay tuned. Stay tuned. Now, Taiwan's democratic history is really short. It's within the lived experience of every person in this room. So we don't have much of a historical record. But in every instance, the incumbent president was reelected. Even in some cases against low standing in opinion polls. So I don't know what's going to happen. The power of incumbency is enormous. Why? Because you get to stand and give speeches that the press covers and talk about the good things you have done, the good things you want to do, the bad things that others are trying to do. And you do it where? Behind presidential seal. Symbol of power, symbol of state. Now, we have a naval captain speaking later. He'll tell you how easy it is to turn a boat that's already moving. In this instance, the ship of state is moving. Hard to change sometimes. Well, let's ask Americans, what country has the greatest economic power in the world today? In 2000, almost all Americans said the US. There were a few people who said China. In 2000, before China entered the World Trade Organization. And there may have been 1 or 2 people that said Taiwan. I doubt it. But by 2009, by 2009, more Americans said China than the United States. And that has continued through 2018. Gallup irritated us. They didn't ask the question this year. They are going to ask it next year. Now it's on a 2-year cycle. But in 2018, it had grown very close. More Americans thought the United States was the dominant economic power. And you can see that, in fact, not a majority, but a lot of Republicans felt that the US was number one. Now, why in 2008, 2009 did Americans think that China was in charge? Well, partly because of the economic meltdown that happened here in the United States. These are front pages from those dire days. Now, what's going on now in the US-China economic relationship? President Trump is focused on the trade balance. But that's not the big issue. The trade balance is what we do today, the economy of today. But the biggest issues in the relationship are about the economy of tomorrow. And that's where this Chinese state plan, Made in China 2025, comes into being. The plan's issued in 2015, and you have these goals. And the Chinese government is putting muscle behind achieving these, having a prominent position in artificial intelligence, robotics, and a bunch of other things. Not everybody is happy about it. The US Chamber of Commerce has spoken out against it. The European Chamber of Commerce has spoken out against it. US-China Business Council, because they are afraid that what it will do is favor Chinese businesses over outside businesses. That favoritism will disadvantage external businesses. This particular chart freaked people out. This was produced by a think tank in Germany, and it's a heat map. And in terms of our relationship with the sun, we're just far enough away we don't get cooked. But if we were at the sun, we would get cooked. And that's what's happening in this chart to South Korea and to Germany, that they will be in jeopardy, that China's economic plans put them at risk. The United States is out here getting a sunburn, but not at the epicenter. Now, why is President Trump president? Why does he have this job? Partly because of this. US manufacturing has never been greater. The United States is at its utmost power in terms of manufacturing, the value of what we produce. We just don't need as many people to do it as we once did. Automation. And of course, you know this in your everyday life. There are businesses that you would have patronized in the past that you don't. You do things yourself using technology, using websites, using apps, doing these kinds of things. Same thing with manufacturing. Fewer hands, more machines. Automation. And that bothered a lot of people. And many of them chose to support Donald Trump. And so this is a poll from 2017. And the red is are Republicans, white independents, blue Democrats. And you can see the Republicans were very, very worried about loss of jobs to China. Also worried about the trade deficit.